It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon at Sterling Trust Bank, one of the largest and most prestigious financial institutions in the city. The air inside the grand marble lobby buzzed with activity as people moved about, conducting their business. Some were depositing checks, others were meeting with advisors to discuss investments, and a few were simply waiting in line for routine transactions. Among these individuals was Maya Carter, a confident and successful entrepreneur who had recently made headlines after securing funding for her innovative tech startup. Dressed in a sharp navy blue suit and carrying important documents for an upcoming meeting, Maya walked into the bank with purpose. Maya had been a loyal client of Sterling Trust Bank for years. She trusted them not only because they managed her finances, but also because they catered specifically to high-net-worth individuals like herself. That day, she had scheduled an appointment with her wealth manager to review some investment opportunities. As she entered the VIP client lounge, a plush area reserved exclusively for elite customers, she felt a sense of pride. This wasn't just another ordinary visit. It was a step forward in her journey toward building something meaningful. But what happened next shattered that moment completely. Standing near the entrance of the lounge was Carl Hargrove, a middle-aged security guard with a reputation for being stern and unapproachable. He had worked at the bank for over a decade, and while many colleagues found him difficult to work with, his connections within upper management kept him employed despite occasional complaints about his behavior. When he saw Maya approaching, something in his demeanor shifted. His eyes narrowed, and instead of greeting her politely or checking her credentials, he stepped directly into her path. "You can't go in there," Carl said abruptly, his voice firm and dismissive. Maya stopped, taken aback by his tone. "Excuse me?" she replied, trying to maintain her composure. "I have an appointment with my wealth manager. I'm a VIP client." Carl crossed his arms, his expression hardening further. "VIP clients don't look like you," he muttered under his breath, though loud enough for Maya to hear clearly. Shock rippled through her body. Was this man seriously implying that she didn't belong here based on how she looked? Trying to stay calm, Maya pulled out her ID badge and a confirmation email for her appointment. "Here's my information," she said evenly, extending the papers toward him. But Carl didn't even glance at them. Instead, he reached out suddenly and grabbed her by the arm, pulling her forcefully away from the entrance. "Let go of me," Maya exclaimed, struggling against his grip. Her heart raced as panic set in. What was happening? Why wasn't anyone stepping in to help? Carl tightened his hold, yanking her closer until his hand wrapped around her neck. The pressure startled her, and she gasped for breath as tears welled up in her eyes. "You're causing trouble," Carl growled, his face inches from hers. "You need to leave now." The entire scene unfolded in front of dozens of witnesses, bank employees, other clients, and passers-by, all frozen in disbelief. Several people began recording the incident on their phones, capturing every harrowing detail. A woman nearby shouted, "Stop, you're hurting her." But Carl ignored the cries. It was as if nothing else mattered to him except asserting his authority, no matter how unjustified it might be. Finally, with sheer determination, Maya managed to break free from his grasp. She stumbled backward, clutching her throat, her chest heaving as she tried to catch her breath. Tears streamed down her face, but anger quickly replaced fear. How could this happen in broad daylight, in such a professional setting? Hadn't she earned the right to be treated with respect? By now, a small crowd had gathered around them. Whispers filled the air as people debated whether to intervene or call for help. One elderly gentleman approached Maya cautiously, offering her a tissue and asking if she was okay. Another woman angrily confronted Carl, demanding to know why he had treated Maya so cruelly. For the first time, Carl seemed unsure of himself, glancing around nervously as the weight of his actions began to sink in. Within minutes, the bank's manager arrived, alerted by the commotion. He looked visibly shaken as he surveyed the situation. After speaking briefly with Carl, he turned to Maya and offered a weak apology. "We'll handle this internally," he assured her, though his words rang hollow. Maya knew better than to accept such a vague promise. Still trembling, she collected her belongings and left the bank, vowing never to return. Little did she know that this incident would soon spiral into a national scandal, exposing not only the racism embedded within Sterling Trust Bank, but also deeper issues lurking beneath its polished exterior. As Maya drove home that evening, replaying the events in her mind, she realized this wasn't just about her. It was about everyone who had ever been treated unfairly because of the color of their skin. And she decided then and there that she wouldn't let this injustice go unanswered. The moment Maya stepped out of Sterling Trust Bank, her heart still pounding from the traumatic encounter, she knew she couldn't stay silent. She had been humiliated, disrespected, and physically assaulted, all because of the color of her skin. But what shocked her even more was how quickly the story spread once videos of the incident hit social media. By the time she reached home, her phone was already buzzing nonstop with notifications. Friends, family, and even strangers were reaching out to express their outrage and support. The video footage, captured by several witnesses in the bank, showed Carl Hargrove grabbing Maya by the neck and dragging her away from the VIP lounge. His harsh words and aggressive actions left viewers appalled. Social media platforms erupted with reactions as hashtags like "Justice for Maya" and "A Banking While Black" began trending nationwide. People shared the clips alongside personal stories of discrimination they had faced in corporate settings, turning Maya's experience into a symbol of a much larger issue. Journalists picked up on the story almost immediately, and local news outlets aired segments about the incident, amplifying the public's demand for accountability. Sterling Trust Bank, however, seemed reluctant to address the situation head-on. Their initial response came in the form of a carefully worded statement released late that evening. "We are aware of the recent events at our branch and are actively reviewing internal protocols to ensure the safety and comfort of all clients." To many, this sounded like an attempt to dodge responsibility rather than take meaningful action. Critics pointed out that the bank failed to acknowledge the blatant racism and violence displayed by one of its employees. The vague apology only fueled the growing anger among the public. As the days passed, the pressure on Sterling Trust Bank intensified. Civil rights organizations, including the National Equality Coalition and Voices for Justice, called for a full investigation into Carl Hargrove's conduct and demanded transparency regarding any past complaints against him. They also urged the bank to implement systemic changes to prevent similar incidents in the future. Prominent figures in the business community joined the conversation, condemning the bank's handling of the situation and questioning whether it truly valued diversity and inclusion. Meanwhile, Maya decided to take legal action. With the help of Marcus Dupree, a renowned civil rights attorney known for his work in high-profile discrimination cases, she filed a lawsuit against both Carl Hargrove and Sterling Trust Bank. The lawsuit accused the guard of racial discrimination, physical assault, and emotional distress while holding the bank accountable for enabling such behavior through negligence. During a press conference held outside the courthouse, Marcus stood beside Maya as she addressed the crowd. "I walked into that bank as a loyal client, expecting to be treated with dignity and respect," Maya said, her voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside her. "Instead, I was met with hostility and violence. This isn't just about me, it's about every person who has ever been made to feel less than human because of their race. We deserve better, and we will fight for justice." Her words resonated deeply with the audience, earning applause and cheers. Reporters fired questions at her and Marcus, eager to learn more about the case and its potential implications. Marcus emphasized that this lawsuit wasn't merely about seeking compensation. It was about exposing the toxic culture within institutions, like Sterling Trust Bank, and forcing them to confront their failures. Behind the scenes, tensions were mounting within the bank itself. Executives scrambled to contain the damage, holding emergency meetings to strategize their next move. They knew that losing public trust could have devastating consequences, especially since Sterling Trust prided itself on catering to wealthy clients. Those same clients were now reconsidering their relationship with the bank. Some began withdrawing their funds, citing concerns about the institution's integrity. Others issued scathing statements criticizing the bank's leadership for allowing such behavior to occur under their watch. Internally, whispers circulated about Carl Hargrove's history at the bank. Employees revealed that he had been reprimanded multiple times over the years for inappropriate comments and aggressive behavior. Yet each time, he escaped serious consequences thanks to connections with upper management. This revelation outraged not only the public but also the bank's own staff, many of whom felt betrayed by the lack of accountability. A group of employees anonymously leaked documents to the media, detailing instances where Carl's misconduct had been swept under the rug. The leaks painted a damning picture of a workplace riddled with bias and complacency. Amidst the chaos, Carl became the face of corporate racism. Once a relatively unknown figure, his mugshot appeared everywhere, on television screens, social media feeds, and newspaper front pages. Memes mocking him went viral, further tarnishing his reputation. While some defended him, claiming he was simply doing his job, the overwhelming consensus was that his actions were inexcusable. Facing mounting scrutiny, the bank terminated his employment, though many argued that firing him was too little too late. For Maya, the whirlwind of attention was both empowering and exhausting. On one hand, she was grateful for the outpouring of support from people across the country. On the other hand, reliving the trauma of that day over and over again took a toll on her mental health. Still, she refused to back down. Every interview she gave, every speech she delivered, and every meeting she attended brought her closer to achieving her goal, ensuring that no one else would suffer the way she had. By the end of the week, the scandal had reached unprecedented levels. Protesters gathered outside Sterling Trust Bank branches, holding signs that read, "No justice, no banking," and chanting slogans demanding change. Politicians weighed in, calling for stricter regulations to combat racism in financial institutions. Even competitors seized the opportunity to criticize Sterling Trust, positioning themselves as more ethical alternatives. As the dust settled slightly, it became clear that this incident was far from over. The lawsuit was just beginning, and the fallout would likely continue for months, if not years, to come. For Maya, however, the battle had already yielded one important victory. It had sparked a national conversation about racism and accountability. And though the road ahead promised to be long and challenging, she remained determined to see it through. After all, this wasn't just her fight. It was everyone's. The scandal surrounding Sterling Trust Bank reached a fever pitch as new revelations came to light, sending shockwaves through the financial world. What started as an isolated incident of racism and violence quickly spiraled into something far more sinister, exposing cracks in the foundation of one of the country's most respected institutions. For Maya Carter, the lawsuit against Carl Hargrove and the bank was only the beginning. As she dug deeper into Sterling Trust's operations with the help of her legal team, she uncovered evidence that painted a chilling picture of corruption, mismanagement, and greed. During the discovery phase of the lawsuit, Maya's attorneys requested internal documents from the bank, hoping to find any patterns of misconduct or negligence that could strengthen their case. What they found went beyond anyone's expectations. Buried in years' worth of financial reports, memos, and emails were clear indications that Sterling Trust had been engaging in risky investments and fraudulent practices for nearly a decade. These activities had left many wealthy clients vulnerable, though the bank had managed to keep its problems hidden behind layers of bureaucracy and secrecy. One particularly damning document revealed how senior executives at the bank knowingly approved high-risk ventures that promised quick profits but ultimately led to massive losses. When these ventures failed, the bank quietly shifted the burden onto unsuspecting clients, often blaming market fluctuations or unforeseen circumstances. In some cases, entire portfolios were wiped out without explanation, leaving investors devastated. Yet, because many of these clients were ultra-wealthy individuals who preferred discretion over publicity, few complaints ever surfaced publicly. Those who did raise concerns were either silenced with settlements or ignored altogether. Maya realized that her own experience with Carl Hargrove wasn't just a random act of racism, it was symptomatic of a much larger problem. The same arrogance and entitlement that allowed someone like Carl to treat her so cruelly also enabled the bank's leadership to prioritize profit over people. She decided to use this information not only to bolster her lawsuit, but also to expose the truth to the world. With Marcus Dupree by her side, she held another press conference, this time presenting the evidence they had uncovered. "This isn't just about what happened to me," Maya told the gathered reporters and cameras. "It's about a system that values money over humanity. A system where wealthy clients are misled, exploited, and abandoned when things go wrong. And it's about how racism and discrimination thrive in environments where accountability is absent." The reaction was immediate and explosive. News outlets pounced on the story, dissecting every detail of the allegations. Financial analysts scrutinized the documents, confirming their authenticity and pointing out how deeply flawed Sterling Trust's practices were. Major investors, including hedge funds and multinational corporations, began pulling their assets en masse, fearing they might be next to lose everything. By dawn the following morning, reports confirmed that $2.6 billion in client assets had vanished from the bank's holdings, a staggering blow that sent the institution teetering on the brink of collapse. Inside Sterling Trust's headquarters, panic set in. Executives huddled in emergency meetings trying to devise a strategy to salvage what remained of their reputation. Public relations teams worked around the clock to craft statements aimed at calming nervous clients, but their efforts fell flat. Trust, once broken, was nearly impossible to rebuild. Employees whispered anxiously in hallways, wondering if they would still have jobs by the end of the week. Morale plummeted as layoffs loomed on the horizon. Amidst the chaos, Carl Hargrove's fate became a focal point of the national conversation. After being fired from the bank, he faced criminal charges for assault and hate crimes. His court appearance drew widespread attention, with protesters gathering outside the courthouse holding signs that read, "Accountability now," and "No place for racism." Inside, prosecutors presented a compelling case, highlighting not only his actions toward Maya but also his history of discriminatory behavior. Despite attempts by his defense team to downplay the severity of his actions, Carl was convicted and sentenced to several years in prison. While some viewed his punishment as justice served, others argued that it didn't go far enough. Critics pointed out that holding one man accountable wouldn't fix the systemic issues plaguing Sterling Trust or the broader financial industry. For Maya, this sentiment resonated deeply. She understood that true change required more than just punishing individuals. It demanded dismantling the structures that allowed such injustices to occur in the first place. As the weeks passed, the fallout continued to ripple outward. Regulators launched investigations into Sterling Trust's practices, threatening hefty fines and stricter oversight. Competitors seized the opportunity to poach disillusioned clients, offering promises of transparency and integrity. Meanwhile, Maya emerged as a powerful advocate for reform. Inspired by her experience, she founded a nonprofit organization called Equity First, dedicated to combating racial bias in banking and advocating for fair treatment of marginalized communities. Equity First quickly gained traction, attracting supporters from all walks of life. Maya partnered with regulators, activists, and industry experts to push for policy changes that would hold financial institutions accountable for discriminatory practices. She traveled across the country, speaking at conferences, universities, and community events, sharing her story and urging others to join the fight for justice. Despite the progress, challenges remained. Some critics dismissed Maya's efforts as idealistic, arguing that systemic change was too difficult to achieve. Others accused her of using the scandal to further her own agenda, but Maya refused to let negativity deter her. She knew that the road ahead would be long and fraught with obstacles, but she also believed that persistence was key. Every speech she gave, every partnership she formed, and every policy she influenced brought her closer to creating a more equitable future. For Sterling Trust Bank, the damage was irreversible. Once a symbol of wealth and prestige, the institution now stood as a cautionary tale of hubris and greed. Its name became synonymous with corruption, and its reputation was tarnished beyond repair. While it managed to survive, albeit in a much smaller, humbler form, the bank would never regain its former glory. As Maya reflected on everything that had transpired, she couldn't help but feel a sense of bittersweet satisfaction. The journey had been grueling, testing her strength and resolve at every turn. But it had also shown her the power of resilience and the importance of standing up for what was right. Through her courage and determination, she had sparked a movement that transcended her personal experience, inspiring countless others to demand better, not just from banks, but from society as a whole. And though the scars of that fateful day would always remain, Maya knew she had turned pain into purpose. Her fight was far from over, but she was ready to face whatever came next. In the wake of the scandal, Sterling Trust Bank found itself at a crossroads. The once mighty institution, known for its gleaming skyscrapers and exclusive clientele, was now teetering on the edge of collapse. Public trust had evaporated. Billions in assets were gone, and its reputation lay in ruins. Yet even amid the chaos, there were glimpses of hope. Small signs that perhaps redemption was possible, though it would require nothing short of a complete transformation. The first step toward rebuilding came with leadership changes. Under mounting pressure from regulators, shareholders, and the public, the bank's CEO resigned in a tearful press conference. Sitting behind a polished wooden table, flanked by members of the board, he admitted to failures in oversight and expressed regret for the harm caused. "I take full responsibility for what has happened," he said, his voice trembling. "It is clear that we have lost the trust of our clients, our employees, and the communities we serve. I believe stepping aside is the right thing to do." His resignation marked a turning point. In his place, the board appointed Vanessa Patel, a reform-minded executive with a background in ethical banking and corporate governance. Vanessa was no stranger to crises. She had previously led a mid-sized financial firm through a major restructuring after allegations of fraud surfaced under her predecessor. Known for her transparency and commitment to fairness, she was seen as a breath of fresh air, a stark contrast to the entrenched culture of secrecy and privilege that had defined Sterling Trust for decades. Vanessa wasted no time getting to work. Her first order of business was to issue a heartfelt apology, not just another vague statement, but a genuine acknowledgement of the bank's failures. During a nationally televised address, she stood before a simple podium, dressed in a modest navy suit, and spoke directly to the public. "What happened here is unacceptable," she began, her tone steady yet sincere. "We failed you, not only as a bank, but as human beings. We allowed racism, greed, and negligence to fester within our walls, and for that I am deeply sorry." Her words resonated with many who had grown weary of empty promises. But Vanessa knew apologies alone wouldn't be enough. To regain trust, she needed to take concrete action. She announced sweeping reforms aimed at addressing the root causes of the scandal. These included mandatory diversity training programs for all employees, stricter hiring and promotion policies to ensure inclusivity, and the creation of an independent ethics committee to oversee operations and investigate complaints. Perhaps, most significantly, Vanessa ordered a full audit of every client account, pledging transparency about how funds had been managed or mismanaged in the past. This decision sent shockwaves through the industry, as audits of this scale were rare and often seen as too risky for banks trying to protect their image. But Vanessa believed that honesty was the only way forward. "If we want people to trust us again," she told her team during an internal meeting, "we must show them we have nothing to hide." While these efforts signaled a new direction for Sterling Trust, not everyone was convinced. Critics argued that the changes were merely cosmetic, an attempt to placate the public without addressing deeper systemic issues. Some questioned whether Vanessa's appointment was simply a PR move, designed to give the illusion of progress while maintaining the status quo. Others pointed out that true accountability required more than policy updates. It demanded justice for those harmed by the bank's actions. For Maya Carter, this period was both triumphant and exhausting. As the face of the movement against racial bias in banking, she continued to push for meaningful change, using her platform to amplify voices that had long been ignored. Her nonprofit organization, Equity First, grew rapidly, attracting volunteers, donors, and partners from across the country. Together, they worked tirelessly to advocate for reforms not just at Sterling Trust, but throughout the financial industry. One of Maya's key initiatives was a campaign to establish stricter regulations. Around client protection, she collaborated with lawmakers, economists, and advocacy groups to draft legislation that would hold banks accountable for discriminatory practices and financial misconduct. Dubbed the Fair Banking Act, the proposed bill gained significant traction, earning endorsements from influential figures in politics and business. If passed, it would represent a monumental shift in how financial institutions operated, prioritizing transparency and equity over profit margins. Despite her success, Maya faced challenges of her own. The constant media attention took a toll on her personal life, leaving little time for rest or self-care. Friends and family urged her to slow down, reminding her that she couldn't shoulder the weight of the world alone. Yet Maya felt a deep sense of responsibility, not just to herself, but to everyone who had ever been mistreated by systems designed to exclude them. "This isn't about me," she often said. "It's about creating a future where no one has to endure what I went through." Back at Sterling Trust, the road to recovery was slow and painful. Thousands of employees lost their jobs as the bank downsized dramatically, shedding branches and cutting costs to stay afloat. For those who remained, morale was low. Many worried about the uncertainty ahead, unsure if the bank could survive in its diminished state. Yet there were also glimmers of optimism. New hires brought fresh perspectives, eager to contribute to a more inclusive and ethical workplace. Training sessions sparked difficult but necessary conversations about race, privilege, and accountability. As months turned into years, Sterling Trust slowly began to rebuild. While it never regained its former dominance, it carved out a niche as a smaller, more community-focused institution. Its leaders embraced the mantra of doing less but doing better, focusing on serving clients with integrity rather than chasing exponential growth. Though some dismissed this approach as overly idealistic, others saw it as proof that even the most broken systems could be repaired, if given the chance. For Carl Hargrove, the disgraced security guard whose actions had ignited the scandal, life took a darker turn. After serving his prison sentence, he struggled to reintegrate into society. Jobs were scarce, friendships harder to come by, and the weight of public shame followed him wherever he went. Some might have viewed his punishment as fitting, but others saw it as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked prejudice. His story served as a reminder that racism doesn't just harm its victims, it destroys lives on all sides. Through it all, Maya remained steadfast in her mission. She traveled extensively, speaking at conferences and universities, sharing her journey with audiences eager to learn from her experiences. Her speeches were filled with passion and urgency, urging listeners to confront uncomfortable truths and take action. "Change doesn't happen overnight," she often said, "but it starts with each of us deciding to stand up, speak out, and demand better, for ourselves and for others." By the time the dust settled, the legacy of the Sterling Trust scandal was undeniable. It had exposed the dark underbelly of corporate America, forcing difficult conversations about race, power, and accountability. It had toppled one of the nation's largest banks, proving that even the most powerful institutions were not immune to consequences. And it had inspired countless individuals, like Maya, to fight for a fairer, more just world. Though the scars of that fateful day would always remain, Maya knew she had made a difference. Her courage had sparked a movement, her resilience had paved the way for reform, and her determination had shown the world that even in moments of despair, hope could prevail. Years after the Sterling Trust Bank scandal first erupted, its impact continued to ripple through society, shaping conversations about race, accountability, and corporate responsibility. The dust had settled, but the lessons learned, and the scars left behind, remained deeply etched in the collective consciousness of the nation. For Maya Carter, the journey that began with a single act of injustice transformed her life in ways she could never have imagined. What started as a personal fight for dignity became a movement that inspired countless others to demand change, proving that even the smallest voices can spark monumental shifts. By the time the lawsuit against Sterling Trust concluded, the verdict was clear. The bank was found liable for enabling Carl Hargrove's actions and failing to address systemic racism within its ranks. The court ordered the institution to pay millions in damages to Maya and other affected clients, though the financial penalty paled in comparison to the reputational damage it had already suffered. More importantly, the ruling set a precedent, sending a message to corporations everywhere that they could no longer ignore issues of bias and discrimination without facing consequences. It wasn't just a legal win, it was a moral victory. For Maya, however, the real triumph lay in the changes she helped bring about beyond the courtroom. Her nonprofit organization, Equity First, grew into a national powerhouse, advocating for policies that promoted fairness and transparency in banking. Through partnerships with lawmakers, activists, and industry leaders, Maya played a pivotal role in passing the Fair Banking Act, a landmark piece of legislation aimed at protecting marginalized communities from predatory practices. The bill required banks to undergo regular audits, implement diversity training programs, and establish independent oversight committees to ensure compliance. Critics initially dismissed it as overly ambitious, but its passage marked a turning point in how financial institutions operated. The success of Equity First didn't stop there. Maya expanded the organization's mission to include educational initiatives, hosting workshops and seminars designed to empower underserved communities. She believed that true equality couldn't be achieved unless people understood their rights and had access to resources that enabled them to thrive financially. One of her most impactful programs was Money Matters, a free course teaching young adults from low-income backgrounds about budgeting, investing, and navigating the complexities of the financial system. Thousands enrolled, eager to learn skills that would help them build better futures for themselves and their families. Maya's work earned her widespread recognition. She graced magazine covers, delivered keynote speeches at prestigious events, and received numerous awards honoring her contributions to social justice. Yet despite the accolades, she remained grounded, always reminding herself and others that her journey was far from over. "Change isn't something you achieve overnight," she often said during interviews. "It's a process, one step at a time. And while we've come a long way, there's still so much more to do." Her humility resonated deeply with those who followed her story. People admired not only her tenacity but also her willingness to listen, learn, and grow. Maya frequently credited the support of her team, family, and community for helping her stay focused during the toughest moments. "I didn't do this alone," she emphasized. "This movement belongs to everyone who stood up, spoke out, and refused to accept the status quo." Meanwhile, Sterling Trust Bank continued to operate, though in a vastly different form than before. Once synonymous with wealth and exclusivity, the institution now positioned itself as a champion of ethical banking. Under Vanessa Patel's leadership, it embraced a new identity, prioritizing client trust over profit margins. While some skeptics dismissed these efforts as mere window dressing, others acknowledged that progress, even incremental, was worth celebrating. The bank's annual reports highlighted strides in diversity hiring, reduced fees for underbanked populations, and investments in underserved neighborhoods. These initiatives weren't perfect, but they signaled a shift toward greater accountability. Carl Hargrove's fate served as a sobering reminder of the costs of prejudice. After completing his prison sentence, he struggled to rebuild his life. Jobs were scarce, friendships harder to come by, and the weight of public shame lingered like a shadow. Some viewed his punishment as fitting, while others saw it as tragic, a wise, cautionary tale about the corrosive effects of unchecked bias. Regardless of perspective, his story underscored the importance of addressing racism, not just as an individual issue, but as a societal one. As time passed, Maya reflected on everything she had endured and accomplished. The memory of that fateful day at the bank still haunted her, but it no longer defined her. Instead, it fueled her determination to create a world where no one else would have to endure such indignities. She often thought about the protesters who had gathered outside Sterling Trust branches, the allies who had amplified her voice, and the strangers who had reached out to share their own stories of discrimination. Together, they had formed a tapestry of resilience and solidarity, proving that collective action could overcome even the greatest obstacles. One evening, as Maya prepared to speak at a gala honoring Equity First's achievements, she paused to take in the moment. Standing backstage, she looked out at the sea of faces, diverse, hopeful, united, and felt a surge of gratitude. This was what all the sacrifices, sleepless nights, and struggles had been for. Not fame or fortune, but the chance to make a difference. When she stepped onto the stage, the room erupted in applause. Smiling warmly, Maya began her speech. "Tonight we celebrate not just what we've achieved, but what we've become," she said, her voice steady and confident. "We are survivors, fighters, dreamers. We are proof that when we stand together, we can challenge systems, rewrite rules, and build a future rooted in fairness and respect." Her words echoed through the hall, inspiring tears, cheers, and standing ovations. As the event drew to a close, attendees lingered, reluctant to leave. Conversations buzzed with excitement. Plans for future collaborations took shape, and commitments to keep pushing forward solidified. In that space, surrounded by people united by a shared vision, Maya felt a profound sense of purpose. Looking back, the Sterling Trust scandal had been a catalyst, a painful yet necessary reckoning that forced society to confront uncomfortable truths. It exposed the cracks in seemingly unshakable institutions and revealed the strength of individuals willing to stand up for what was right. For Maya, it was a reminder that courage, resilience, and compassion could ignite transformative change. And so as she walked away from the podium that night, Maya knew her work was far from finished. There would always be new battles to fight, new injustices to address, and new dreams to pursue. But she also knew she wasn't alone. Together, she and countless others would continue to push for a world where everyone, regardless of race, gender, or background, could walk into any space and feel seen, valued, and respected.